Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with the top 10 list for the most impactful boss units in the Royal Paladin clan. This will be the start of a series of top 10 lists documenting the most noteworthy bosses among the 24 clans of Vanguard. Now, Vanguard has a robust history, and I felt it was about time the community had a list dedicated to observing it and remembering the many highlights of the game's past. And today we're starting with good old Royals and their boss units. Royal Paladin is one of the original clans of the game, dating all the way back to the first ever set in the game, and even having the cover card of that set being King of Knights Alfred on the set Descent of the King of Knights. Who would have thought? This fan favorite clan has seen a great deal of powerful and noteworthy vanguards over the years, some of which solidified the prolific meta status for Royal Paladins. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at the top 10 among them and discuss why these particular cards were so impactful for the clan. And without any further ado, let's begin. Immortal Holy Sword Fetus. Now, Immortal Holy Sword Fetus was a stride unit released in set 14 and had the following two skills. Act on the Vanguard circle once per turn. Counterblast 1 and choose a face down card from your G zone and turn it face up. Until end of turn, this unit gets the following skill. Continuous on the Vanguard circle. If your opponent has only one Guardian, the attack of your units with the Brave ability will hit regardless of power. The second skill stated, Auto on the Vanguard circle. Generation Break 4, Brave. When this unit attacks, if you have a hard card with Alt Mile in its card name, search your deck for up to 3 cards, call them to separate rear circles, and shuffle your deck. Now, this unit was the final boss unit for the Brave archetype, an archetype that has been prolific throughout the entirety of the G era, although not necessarily to meta effect. That said, Immortal Holy Sword Fetus immediately made Brave the standout meta deck for the GZ era Vanguard, as with its combination of easy multi-attack during the battle phase and the turn-wide battle door, the deck had the ability to eviscerate your hand, especially since multiple of its rear guards could enable further multi-attacks such as Suleiman and Albion. And although it does have Brave restrictions and Generation Break 4 restrictions to its call skill, these were easy enough to parse with, as not only was Generation Break 4 easily achievable by the second stride for most decks, being able to achieve Brave was almost laughable as a condition when it had access to Knight of Discipline Electos, a starter which gave you the Brave condition regardless of the amount of cards in your hand, meaning that Fetus had virtually no downsides as a boss unit. The only thing that holds Fetus from being a higher spot on this list is, despite it being an incredibly dominant boss unit on the level of Chronovisor Heritage at the end of the GZ era, this only really impacted Alt Mile and bringing it to the meta status. It didn't impact other Royal Paladin decks, which more or less did not have any Brave units to take advantage of for Fetus. Furthermore, the GZ era only lasted for a short while, and once it came time for Premium and the V Premium eras, Fetus quickly fell off from the meta as the power creep engaged from V Premium bosses and their tactics quickly made G era bosses a thing of the past, for the most part anyway. So although Fetus's impact was massive on release, it was also a brief impact, making it only the number 10 spot on this list. And galloping at a number 9 is Aerial Divine Knight Alt Mile. Now, Alt Mile had only one skill as a stride unit, which is Auto, choose a face down card named Aerial Divine Knight Alt Mile from your G zone and turn it face up. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, until end of turn, this unit gets the following skill. Continuous on the Vanguard Circle, all of your units in the front row get plus 3000 power. Then, if the number of face-up cards in your G zone is 2 or more, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 card, call to the rear guard circle, and that unit gets 5000 power until end of turn. Now, when compared to Immortal Holy Sword Fetus on the list, Alt Mile definitely seems rather lacking as a boss unit, as not only did it only have a minor power up to the front row rather than the battle door, and only the ability to call 1 card, but Alt Mile just did not have a lot of finishing power. However, that's not what made Alt Mile better. The thing that puts Alt Mile ahead of Fetus is that this was a defining strike that saw play across multiple archetypes due to its generic usefulness. After all, the card granted a large power-up and a potential grade 2 of your choice from the deck, 2 effects which are usually associated with what made Royal Paladins good at the time. This was also a super easy and free card, and it flipped up a copy of itself. It was potentially the ideal first stride for Royal Paladin decks at the time, as being able to get to Generation Break 2 immediately was not a given in the early G era. Now, having said that, Alt-Mile decks did receive the greatest power up from this, particularly when Transcending the Heaven Alt-Mile was released, as that card scaled off the number of Era Divine Knight Alt-Miles face up in the Generation Zone. But even without it, this was a generic boss unit which saw play in most Royals lists in G, and even until 2017 in some fringe cases, making it a long-standing boss. The only thing that stops it from being higher on this list is, although it was incredibly prolific, the card dropped off in most Royals lists which had dedicated strides that were preferable, but the foundation it provided in early to mid-G was just so impactful that it had to make this list. Charging in at number 8 is King of Knights Alfred. Now, Alfred was a main deck grade 3 with 10,000 base power and the usual wind drive effect. Alfred had 3 effects on the Vanguard circle. Continuous, your units cannot boost this unit. The second effect was another continuous Vanguard circle skill, which during your turn, this unit gets 2,000 power for each of your Royal Paladin rearguards. The final effect was an axe skill on the Vanguard or rearguard circle, which counterblasted 3 in order to search your deck for up to 1 grade tier or less Royal Paladin, call to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. Now, Alfred was the most iconic cards behind Majesty Lord Blaster and Blaster Blade, and was meta defining for the first year of Vanguard in 2011, and even saw play in Majesty Lord Blaster decks in 2012, eventually leading to its place in the restriction list in 2013. Now, the card had huge numbers simply for building a field, and its 20k maximum was a strong number, as 11k Vanguards was not the universal base power for grade 3 Vanguards during this initial era of the game. This means that Alfred, coming in at 20, even without a booster, would potentially demand a 15k guard by itself against 10k or 9k base grade 3s. And if that wasn't enough, its ability to counterblast 3 and search for up to 1 grade tier or less Royal Paladin, albeit a very expensive skill, was a very reliable way to plus, as in the early days, plussing was not a very given aspect of any deck. Perhaps one of the most struggles of any deck was the ability to plus, so Royal Paladins, which had strong fundamentals in garnering more rear guards, was precisely the reason why the deck saw so much competitive success in the initial stages of the game. And the fact that this ability to call rear guards for 3 counterblasts was a rear guard skill gave it a continued relevance in Soul Saver and Majesty Lord Blaster decks. Furthermore, as a good strong first ride for Soul Saver decks, Alfred would be the standard for a Royal Paladin strategy in the first era of Vanguard, giving it a really reliable place at number 8 on this list. And now swinging at number 7 is Blaster Blade Exceed. Blaster Blade Exceed was a normal grade 3 boss unit with 11,000 power and the following 2 skills. Auto on the Vanguard circle, counterblast 1. When your G unit with Saver and its card name strides during your turn, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 card with Blaster Blade and its card name, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. The second skill, Red, Auto, counterblast 1. When this unit is placed on Vanguard or Rearguard circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or greater rearguards and retire it. Now, this was the cover card for one of the strongest, if not the strongest, legend decks out of the G era. And that was because it was not only a very powerful strategy, but it was a simple strategy, making it a good entry point for players in a not very new, player-friendly G era. The real selling point of Blasters as a deck during its time in the meta was that it had potentially the pinnacle of early rush ability and could prevent the opponent from striding with its grade 2 game, only being power crept by the last 3 sets of G and the advent of Brave as the strongest deck at the end of G, thanks in part to Immortal Holy Sword Fetus, who would have thought. Anyway, when the players did get to grade 3 and started striding, that's where Blaster Blade Exceed started to show his worth, as card advantage and removal were big selling points of Blasters, and this could provide both of those for 1 counterblast apiece. Potentially one of the strongest aspects of Blaster Blade Exceed was how versatile it was. Being able to search another copy itself for stride fodder was one avenue you could go for, obviously, but also being able to search itself as a rear guard to be used for the counterblast skill to retire, or as a rear guard to be used with the likes of Alfred Holy Saver, a card which would grant a Blaster Blade unit of the rear guard circle the ability to perform Twin Drive. This search ability, in combination with control, meant that Exceed was one of the centerpieces of the strategy. It alone did not heavily impact the deck, as the combination of the strides, the other rear guards like Lou for the early multi-attack, and also the overall package of Royal Paladin staples meant that although Blaster Blade Exceed wasn't a super duper impactful boss unit, it was the glue that molded everything together, giving it a very respectable 7th place on this list. And now stepping in at number 6 is Soul Saver Dragon. Soul Saver Dragon was a grade 3 normal unit with 10,000 power and the following 2 skills. First skill stated, auto on Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, this unit gets plus 3,000 until end of that battle. The second skill was auto, Soul Blast 5. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 3 of your Royal Paladin rearguards, and those units get 5,000 power until end of turn. Now, Soul Saver Dragon may not seem like anything at first glance, but it was actually a defining finisher for 2011 that closed games far more efficiently than most anything the format had to offer in the first year of play, and combined with Barkall, was responsible for Royal Paladin's domination of Japan's first major tournament circuit. This was because it was the incarnation of sheer power and beatdown. 5,000 power to 3 of your units was a ridiculous effect to get off, as when stated previously in the number 8 spot, card advantage was hard to come by in the first year or 2 of Vanguard, so every 5k more that you demanded from the opponent's shield was another 5k or more closer to them not being able to guard your attacks. Even the 3k boost with the first skill was a pretty powerful skill, as this in combination with a 7 or 8k booster from behind made magic numbers and demanded yet again more shield from the opponent. The Soul Blast 5 skill, while expensive, was also easy to set up due to soul charge options and the Blaster Blade ride engine, which would get you up to 5 once you rode over something like, let's say, an Alfred or some other grade 3 at the time. So it was surprisingly consistent, really good at killing the opponent, and also easy to see, as there was a searching card called Pongal at the time, which would allow you to tutor out a Soul Saver Dragon to the hand, making it just one of the first dominant strategies in this game's history, and easily a member of the top 10 list at number 6. And now, riding in at number 5 is Sanctuary Guard Regal. Sanctuary Regal was yet another stride, but also with only one effect. Continuous on the Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have a hard card with Sanctuary Guard in its card name, all of the units in your front row get plus 3,000 power for each of your grade 1 or less rearguards. Now, this was a ridiculous card, but again, like with the previous entry on this list, not a very difficult card to understand. It was essentially a beatdown card, but it defined a standard of power for Royals during the early to mid G era. The card was incredibly good at generating huge numbers for its board, a common theme for good Royal Paladin decks. You could essentially give all of your units in the front row about 9, 12, or, in the maximum capacity, 15k to the front row. Now, this was just so ridiculous and also required little setup, as you could tutor out just any number of grade 1s that you wanted, potentially even up to 5, and then from there it was as simple as 1, 2, 3. You just attack your opponent and they can't guard your numbers, and then you just won the game. This was such a menacingly good strategy that you could run, and often did run back in the day, 12 critical triggers, because that was how confident the deck was in being able to kill the opponent. This also meant that it had a really good early aggro, as you would be able to just rush down the opponent, threaten critical triggers with your early swings, get them up to the high damage, and with the lack of good defensive options during the early G era, they would honestly die around turn 3 to turn 4. So it had lightning quick efficiency and deadly kill potential, all with just a simple effect to give 3k for each grade 1 or less card on your fields. And now legioning in at number 4, Thing Saver Dragon. Thing Saver Dragon was a normal grade 3 with 11,000 power and the following 3 skills. The first was Act, Vanguard Circle, Legion with Blaster Blade Seeker. Now, to explain, the Legion effect stated that if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit may return any 4 cards from your drop zone into your deck once, search your deck for the specified card, and Legion. The second skill stated, Auto on the Vanguard Circle, Counter Blast 2, Soul Blast 3, and choose 2 cards from your hand and discard them. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked a Vanguard. If this unit is Legion, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 card named Seeker, Thing Saver Dragon. Write it as stand, shuffle your deck, choose a card named Blaster Blade Seeker from your soul, and Legion. Auto on Vanguard Circle, When this unit attacks a Vanguard, this unit gets 2000 power until end of that battle. Now, Secret Thingsaver Dragon was notably a more wordy Vanguard compared to a lot of what we saw in the previous entries in the list, and it helped create one of the strongest Legion decks ever due to pre-clan restrictions, allowing it to be played with another one of the most powerful Legions in Revenger, Phantom Blaster, Dragon Abyss. The rewrite skill was expensive, but resulted in powerful Vanguard multi-attack that outclassed most of the meta. Legions were at bare minimum 20,000 power, and then in combination with strong boosters and other minor effects such as Secret Thingsaver Dragon's Vanguard effect to get plus 2,000 power, you could create some very, very strong Vanguard attacks. And although it did discard 2 cards from the hand, you would be able to immediately replenish those 2 cards with another Twin Drive at Legion, meaning that you would be able to go hand neutral while still performing the extra attack and getting all the extra beatdown power from any potential triggers that you got during those 4 drive checks. This saw competitive play from its release in 2014 all the way through early G, and it was one of the primary reasons why clan restrictions exist in Modern Premium and V Premium, a true testament to how powerful Secret Thingsaver Dragon was during its time in Vanguard. Although it fell off due to the advent of G-Guards and other powerful stride options, during its time, Thingsaver Dragon really brought Royal Paladins into the highest tier of competitive success due to it, in part, with Shadow Paladins making one of the most indomitable tier 0 decks in the history of the game. Although it would not take a spot higher than this because it did in part need help from the Shadow Paladin side of things, which, hint hint, may or may not also see a place on a list regarding Shadow Paladins, but that's a discussion for another day. And now saving the day at number 3 is Pure Heart Jewel Knight Ashley. This is a V retrain with 13,000 power, the Force Marker icon, and the following 2 skills. Auto on the Vanguard Circle and Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle, this unit attacks Soul Blast 2. Search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 or less card with Jewel Knight in its card name, call to the Rearguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. However, if this unit is on Vanguard Circle, call up to 2 cards instead of 1. The second skill was Auto on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When your other unit is placed on this unit's circle, Counterblast 1, and that placed unit gets critical +1 until end of turn. Now, Pure Heart Jewel Knight Ashley was the centerpiece of the very well received Jewel Knight engine, an engine which consisted of herself as well as various different grade 2 or less Jewel Knights. Now, all of the Jewel Knights had some skill to give you back Soul Charge and also have multi-attack and an ability when they were called over. This was consistent also with Ashley's skills, which demanded a Soul Blast 2, but also granted you a critical skill when you called over her. It provided easy multi-attack for every Royal Paladin clan in V-Series. Other Jewel Knights giving you Soul Charge also would sustain the costs of other Royal Paladin decks such as Thingsaver Dragon, not only making it beneficial for providing multi-attack, but also beneficial in granting strong resource engines for every deck in the clan. It was additionally a powerful first ride due to it calling 2 cards from the deck for double multi-attack and providing a critical to the actual boss unit of whatever deck you happen to be playing. It easily elevates the entire clan in V Premium, and the reason why, despite other bosses potentially being more powerful finishers, this would be higher on the list as its impact on the V-Series Royal Paladin deck cannot be understated, only being out by the next 2 cards on this list. And now shining in at number 2 is Holy Dragon Crystal Luster Dragon. This was a stride with 2 following skills. Act on the Vanguard Circle once per turn, turn a card from your G-Zone face up as the cost, and until end of turn, this unit gets all the original abilities of one of your heart cards. The second skill, stated, continuous on the Vanguard Circle, Generation Break 3. If you have 3 or more grade 2 or greater units, when your opponent would call cards from his or her hand to Guardian Circle, he or she must call 3 or more at the same time. Now, this stride defined Royal Paladins as a clan in Premium since its release 3.5 years ago, as it made almost every V-Series Royal Paladin playable in Premium. The copying skill had a ton of abuse and made the clan into V-Series Plus, a term in which strides would gain the abilities of their heart cards, meaning that you could just use V-Series bosses but then get additional effects and benefits on top of that. And this was arguably the one with the most ways to exploit its particular card pool of bosses, as copying the skills had tons of interactions. Sanctuary Guard would allow Crystal Luster to restand and get more multi-attack. Majesty Lord Blaster had the ability to give it power, critical, drive, and also force marker generation. And the cream of the crop was the Jewel Knight's interactions, as not only could it gain the powerful skills of Jewel Knights such as Salome's Restand and Ashley's multi-attack, but the placeover skills that came with Jewel Knights would also apply to Crystallister as it was being placed over their Vanguard circle, so he could get even further benefits of drives and crits and powers and just more ways to beat the opponent over. Let's not forget about the Battledore skill. The triple Battledore skill gave the clan, in combination with its prolific multi-attack, just an easy means of ripping through the opponent's resources and making it so that they would be unable to guard through your turn. This was even easier than his brother Arms Chainraker Dragon, which required you to have 3 grade 1 or less rear guards, as since the condition of Crystallister stated 3 or more grade 2 or greater units, it would actually in of itself qualify for the condition of the effect being a grade 4 stride. So you would only need 2 others at grade 2 or greater in order to make this Battledore live at all times, and as we've seen throughout this list, having access to grade 2 or greater units was no difficult feat for a Royal Paladin deck, especially when you used it with Jewel Knights, which would easily call them from the deck among various other means of doing so. So Crystallister Dragon was just a dominant stride for Royal Paladins, and defined it to a point where many in the community would jokingly say that Royal Paladins had no other strides, and you would just stride Crystallister as many times as you needed to win the game. However, despite all this, there is still one card on this list which is arguably more impactful than Crystallister Dragon on the clan, and it's because of just what a raw symbol of power for the clan that it ended up being. And now finally, being the symbol of hope at number 1, Majesty Lord Blaster. Majesty Lord Blaster has 2 skills as a grade 3 normal unit with 10,000 power. The first skill was a continuous on Vanguard Circle, stating if you have a card named Blaster Blade and a card named Blaster Dark in your soul, this unit gained 2,000 power and critical +1. Note, this was continuous at all times, even during the opponent's turn. The second skill was auto on the Vanguard Circle. Choose a unit named Blaster Blade and a unit named Blaster Dark from your rear circle and put them into his soul. When this unit attacks, you may pay the cost. If you do, this unit gains 10,000 power until end of that battle. Now, this was arguably the most iconic unit after Blaster Blade in the clan, and one of the most iconic units in the game of Vanguard, period. Majesty Lord Blaster was the first real sign of power creep in the legendary set 5, which also gave us access to such powerful cards as Draconic Overlord The End. It dominated since its introduction and saw play well into the Break Ride era, and even when it was hit in the list of January 2013, it still saw lots of tops, meaning that Majesty Lord Blaster was effectively an almost unstoppable deck strategy. It had access to a lot of different pieces, such as, of course, the blasters, which could provide removal. It also had access to Wingall Brave to search any blaster of your choice that you wanted, a lot of the very powerful pool of cards from Royal Paladins to gain other pluses and strong rearguard numbers. And to top it all off, Majesty Lord Blaster himself was just a beast. Being a 12k base with a critical at all times gave it a unparalleled number of presence, both offensively and defensively. And with how well the critical was suited to certain control strategies, you could effectively threaten your opponent at 3 damage with a critical Vanguard, meaning that if they were to take the attack and you hit a critical trigger, they would go from 3 to 6 and lose the game right there, meaning that during the limit break and sometimes in the Break Ride era, Majesty Lord Blaster could effectively deny the opponent from getting those powerful limit break skills, and that would cripple a lot of deck strategies during this time. So you could even say that it was more toxic than ever when new mechanics started coming out. Although the second skill isn't quite as well known, being able to get 10,000 power by taking a Blaster Blade and a Blaster Dark from the rearguard into the soul was still a good effect, giving it large numbers that was still noteworthy even when you got into the Break Ride era of Vanguard. 22 or potentially even 30 to 31 if you had a 7 or 8k booster. That was more than enough to make the opponent really guard hard, otherwise they would die with, once again, this continuous critical that was on Majesty Lord Blaster. B and D series also shows just how powerful this kind of card would be, as Majesty Lord Blaster in the V series was a well-known boss unit in the meta, albeit not one of the most dominant boss units, but still one of the better showings for Royal Paladins in V meta. And recently, D-Series Majesty Lord Blaster, a card that was previously clowned on being one of the worst bosses in the format, actually started to see tops after a recent promo enabled it more multi-attack and power. So, that just goes to show that no matter the era and no matter the time, Majesty Lord Blaster will always have an impact on Royal Paladins as a clan and be one of the very, very strong faces of Royal Paladins, making it potentially an unparalleled spot for the #1 on this list. And that was the list. Overall, the Royal Paladin clan has had an incredible showing with its various boss units, remaining a force in the meta for many formats and eras of Vanguard. Although some impacted the clan for their sheer power like Crystal Luster and Thing Saber Dragon, others such as Ashley and Aerial Divine Knight Altmile left their mark for being a valuable asset in many lists for their time. And as time goes on, this fan favorite clan is sure to gain many more defining tools in its arsenal of knights, but that is a topic for another day. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, then let me know what other top 10 lists you would like me to do. I'm planning on moving on with a list like this for the other Paladin clans, but it's a toss-up from there, so hit me up if there's a clan or topic you'd like me to do. In the meantime, check out my other videos. I do discussion videos like this, fight nights, tier lists, the whole shebang. And if you like what you see, consider leaving a subscribe and turn on the notification bell for the next time I upload a video. And with that, take care, God bless.